But then you get the other people there. So, yeah, and then also have some shit.
Okay, I don't maybe they've already told you. Okay. No, not yet. No big deal. Okay, good. I'm using this. I like to. Oh, that's just sounding like a lot.
No. When you read it, it's up to you. I will feel.
It's my pleasure to you don't want to.
How do you do it? I always do it.
No.
I need to pay for it just
No.
Ok. Oui, non. C'est suffisamment de place.
So we're going to get started. Our opening remarks will be made by the esteemed director here of the Carter G. Woodson Institute, Deborah McDowell.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you so much. Welcome. As Marlena says, I'm Deborah McDowell, current director of the Carter Woodson Institute for African American and African Studies. Let me begin by thanking the sponsors of this symposium, the College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the Carter G. Woodson Institute, the Institute for the Humanities and Global Cultures. And while I am giving thanks, let me certainly and not least thank the organizers of this wonderful symposium, Marlena Doubt, Kayama Glover, and Christina Mobley. The energetic powerhouses in general, but certainly the energetic powerhouses behind this symposium. This is a red letter day for us at the Institute, though we are not the only organizers or co-hosts of this event. And I must rush to add, as people have heard me say in recent months, we have had many red letter days of which to boast, including most recently that day marking our recent elevation to the status of an academic department. Within the College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. this evening holds special significance among those prior special days because we are able to co-host this symposium on Haiti and the digital humanities, thus not only deepening as a department our intellectual engagements with diasporic, specifically Caribbean studies, but also extending and deepening our investments in digital scholarship, which have been heretofore confined to the US and specifically the modern civil rights movement. I am struck by the first half of the title the organizers have given this symposium, Enduring Questions, New Methods. Inasmuch as US institutions of higher learning seem to fetishize novelty, to privilege newness, often for its own sake, I find it significant that at least in this title, new, as in new methods, comes after enduring, as in enduring questions. All too often, the new becomes a substitute, a rationale, an alibi, an avoidance, in many cases, of the enduring, often in the service of ideas and ideologies of progress. And it is easily argued that the enduring questions surrounding Haiti derive from enduring narratives about Haiti, all driven by suppositions. As the organizers suggest, the dominant narrative of Haiti remains an unanalyzed story in which cultural and political advocates from the United States, France, Great Britain, and what historian Brenda Gale Plummer has otherwise called the great powers, have been required to intervene in Haiti on many different occasions in order to save the country from itself. However, the asymmetrical and often dialogic influence of Haiti on these world powers in the realms of art, of literature, culture, music, religion, for example, are rarely presented, with many scholars and other writers, especially journalists, choosing to focus their attention instead on long historical Atlantic world fears about Haiti, particularly in the wake of its War of Independence, 1791 to 1803, or more contemporary fears of Haitian migration to the US in the form of both people fleeing a blank hole of a country. The organizers have brought together leading thinkers, cultural actors from Haiti, the United States, and the certain Caribbean, many of whom constitute the greatest minds in Haitian studies, both long-standing and emerging. That 4 of these scholars are now in our ranks, and 3 of them organizing the symposium, gives our university great cause for boasting, and in this case, legitimate boasting. Along with the scholars who are our guests, they have taken up and contested many of these enduring narratives of fear, repression, failure, and dependency. Collectively crossing multiple disciplines, their work deepens our collective understanding of the prominent role Haiti and Haitians have had in making and critiquing the modern world system. Importantly, in organizing this explicitly interdisciplinary symposium, they have involved various entities across the University of Virginia, including the Woodson Institute, as I've indicated, the Global South Lab, the Program in American Studies, the Department of History, the French Department, the Latin American Studies Program, the Center for the Americas, and the Department of Politics. I mention them not merely as co-sponsors, but as intellectual co-collaborators, working together to enable the kinds of generative questions, the kinds of conversations and perspectives, while employing the newest intellectual methodologies, questions and methodologies that bid, not least, to disrupt the intellectual colonialism of Haiti that has contributed to the silencing of the country's past. Thank you very much. Again, welcome.
Good evening. Those who don't know me, I teach in the Department of Politics here at UVA. Let me first thank my colleagues, Marlene, Christina, and Karima Glover for organizing this interdisciplinary workshop and viewing questions, new methods, Haitian studies in the 21st century, and for inviting me to moderate this panel, building programs for Haitian studies in the United States. I was given very clear marching orders about the role of the moderator. He instructed me that I have, and I quote, to be a rigorous and draconian keeper of time. I will oblige. In addition, I should simply introduce the panelists by name only, since you can read their biographies in the program. I will therefore comply again. Now, before I do so, however, let me read the prompt for this panel. I will be reading it in French. It was published in the Haitian daily Le Nouvelliste, and it was written by Lucie Carmel Paul-Austin. I would have tried to translate it, but I don't think I would have done a good job, so I'm staying in the French language. Les haïtianistes contemporains sont dispersés plus particulièrement en dehors du quadrilatère national dans les centres de recherche ou les cercles universitaires étrangers. La matière haïtienne, comme tout autre objet de connaissance, continue encore et toujours de soulever des intérêts pour faire avancer les études postcoloniales, subalternistes, postmodernes, enfin toute la panoplie des sèmes héritées de la grande fracture coloniale, celle qui crée le centre et la périphérie. Sauf que dans le cas historique d'Haïti, la périphérie, au-delà de sa temporalité propre, a pu redéfinir le centre. Le cas d'Haïti permet de questionner les notions de totalité et de globalité dans le répertoire des universalistes convaincus d'une vérité et d'une seule. L'avènement au monde de cette terre arawak, Haïti, peuplée de Noirs, opère une cassure ontologique aux dimensions politiques et philosophiques fondamentales pour les questions liées à l'origine, entraînant de ce fait des difficultés à théoriser les identités partagées, l'hybridité culturelle, le multiculturalisme, le mutisme ethnique, le marronnage, etc. Now, let me introduce our distinguished panelists who have played and continue to play a major role in Haitian studies and in the development of these studies. I will do so in alphabetical order. Cécile Assilien from the University of Kansas, Laurent Dubois from Duke University, Claudine Michel from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and Jean-Eddy Saint-Paul from Brooklyn College at the City University of New York. I do, however, have marching orders for them. Each panelist can either read her or his response to the prompt or comment on the reflections of their co-panelists. The choice is theirs. The panel will have about 55 minutes to engage in rigorous discussion, and then members of the audience will have about half an hour to ask questions and make comments. I thus suggest that each panelist take no more than 5 minutes for her or his initial intervention. So let us start. Cécile, you have the floor.
In order to obey, I shall give my paper to stick to the 5 minutes. I am on Kansas time. So
Oh.
you didn't specify which 5 minutes.
2 hours. Oh, you're late.
As I reflect on what comes to mind is what is being built, where, for whom, and who are the builders. To build properly, there must be a strong foundation and concrete discussion about what is already built. In that creation, it is crucial to allow spaces for new ideas and voices to strengthen what is being built. Some questions that are worth thinking about are: what is the responsibility of the program builders in terms of integrating colleagues who are working in the part of the field in Haiti? Is Haiti the center of Haitian studies or the US? What does that mean? Can there be several centers since Haitians are dispersed all around the world? If so, are these centers collaborating with one another and how? If not, what are some concrete ways in which they can harmonize to strengthen Haitian studies? Many program builders are not aware of their positionality and privilege because they build from a unilateral and individual framework instead of a collaborative one. I believe that programs should be built in an organic manner and from a creolicized mindset. This creolization is referring to the dissension sense of the word, that is, as a process, an ongoing series of actions and events, merging ideas and epistemologies from different areas, geographical and disciplinary, which result in the formation of new knowledge. A sustainable program implies constant exchanges between the various spaces, as well as ongoing collaboration between scholars in the US and Haiti. These exchanges and collaborations must take place in a coherent manner beyond merely meeting at conferences and exchanging contact information. In our building, we should also be very mindful of the legacy of colonialism. Our aim should be to build programs that do not merely become new sites of neo-colonialist discourses and establishments. Thank you. I still have 2 minutes.
I'll also speak very briefly to open. First, thank you so much for the invitation, and I want to thank especially the organizers of these events. Take a huge amount of labor of all kinds. So, and it's also an honor to be on this panel with so many leading figures in the field. And I also do want to say that everything I'll talk about tonight about Duke is really collaborative, has involved Deborah Jensen, Jacques Pierre, who has built a whole curriculum in Haitian Creole at Duke, which is kind of the foundation of basically everything we do there. And of course, students, 3 of whom are in the room, Claire Payton, and all former students now, Claire just defended, Christy Mobley and Julia Caffield. So the point I wanted to make mostly in the prompt was just this question of how we create institutions that can kind of embody our intellectual and political commitments as a discipline, and how we might create new forms of acting in the academy that are in the spirit, right, of what community and Haitians demand of us. So I try to think through, particularly in the prompt, the idea that the periphery has redefined the center as that kind of point of inspiration for a kind of Haitian studies that, on the one hand, is very rooted in the commitment to Haiti, working from and with and through Haiti, but also takes seriously that commitment to transform other fields and disciplines. Right? I don't think there can be Haitian studies that will ever thrive if it doesn't also take on and kind of, in some ways, transform the disciplines in the university, force new ways of thinking about history, force new ways of thinking about what literature is, and so forth. So I think that question of how we create those institutions is kind of vital. In 2 quick cases that I'll just mention at Duke that have been institutional endeavors, one is a collaboration with Edouard Barcalier from several years ago in the Haiti laboratory, and the other, the Radio Haiti project, which is kind of trying to build an archive around the Radio Haiti materials. It's become very clear that the question of both getting a group of people who are really committed to the project, but also constantly finding allies institutionally within Duke and elsewhere, that we can kind of push to participate in a project and convince to participate in a project has been vital to it. And I do think that's kind of the way in which Haitian studies within the university, but more broadly, kind of play multiple roles. So, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to Marlene, Kayama, and Christina for the invitation, and for the University of Virginia for hosting us. I first learned about the assignment to either read your prompt or to comment on one another's paper today. So I'm going to be a little bit irreverent, which is... I think Laura diverted a little bit already. So, because one of my points is that scholarship for Haiti must be bold, and that's where I'm going with. And I'm not planning to read my quote, but I started with a quote by George Lipstick from the University of California, saying that there are three miracles about Black folks. The miracle of simple survival. We know the story about Haiti. We don't have to comment on that. The miracle of enduring humanity, okay, and that's our Black ethos, that's our culture, and the notion of food that I want to talk about very briefly, and of course the generative Black democracy, and there is a long history of Black philosophy, consciousness, and a long history of resistance and the practice of resistance that Haiti is part of, including Haitian intellectualism, you know, for centuries. So we know, okay, that's the first paragraph, or no? What do you have here? Oh, that's the problem. Okay, okay. Oh.
Do you want to see? Do you want to put up the?
If you can, please. Oh, no. Yeah. Okay, so this is what I have in the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, I talk about Haiti not being the periphery, but the center when it comes to not only the two bookends, you know, that we know about the revolution and all this, but the advances in intellectualism, knowledge, and culture, and high human ideals beyond its history of resistance. And of course, I talk about what Haiti has contributed to the world history in terms of culture, notions of citizenship, human rights, freedom, democracy, moral philosophy, and ethics. And my third paragraph here, I talk about Gilles' call for rassemblage and for the narrative. And those projects are both an engagement with local epistemologies and also roadmaps, okay? And that's where, as someone who has spent 30 plus years in an ethnic studies department, we take very seriously the notion of engaged scholarship. A scholarship that comes from the people, that returns to the people, and we know, like in the late 60s and 70s, that's where the ethnic studies movement started with demanding inclusion into the academy. And ethnic studies department are faring very well nationwide, but then the people who we represent are still dealing with major life crises, with broken lives in many cases. So there's another level of engagement and responsibility of ethics, of including the people whom we study and whom we must serve as co-creators, not only of culture, but of knowledge. And I think Vodou is a very good example of this, because this is an area where the expert knowledge is coming from the people who have always been seen as lesser than. I use the concept of Carrefour in the epilogue of a book by Kayama and Alexandra Benedicti and Mark Schuller and Picard Bon. And I feel very strongly about this notion. Carrefour, of course, we start with the spirit of Lekba, spirit of transformation, notion of interconnectedness, but it is also a method of project ideas. It is a source of archive, it is our axis mundi. This is where the two worlds connect, and this is where Haiti can inform scholarship and continue its history of intellectualism and leading when it comes to human rights and freedom. We can either, and the ethics is extremely important there. Going back to Libby Serra, Charlene Désir, with their notion of la cour, combitisme, et des droits fondamentaux, l'école la caille. So we must reflect ethically. That's extremely important. Of course, I have a range of questions that we can bring up in the question period, but it's like, who's doing work on scholarship? How are we doing it? Who is included in those spaces? The question that Nadel may now pose about access with digital technology. Who gets the funding? In what language is the material presented? How do we use our own position of privilege in the United States to continue ethnic studies and Haitian studies in our case, by including voices? Anyway, I'll leave this, but I will say that we can either at this crossroad, okay, and Josiane Dikouban, the new president of HSA, reminded us of when HSA was created 30 years ago. It was right after the Duvalier overthrow, and there was this sense of hope in returning home and embracing the country. So we must return to that original idea, and we can either enhance our collective human experience or further diminish the lives of our Greek communities throughout the world if we do not engage responsibly with our scholarship in Haiti, but also putting Haiti as the center of this history of intellectualism, resistance, and freedom throughout the world. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Me too, it's my pleasure and privilege to be here. I thank the organizer, Marlene, Kayama, Christy, for having me today, but also in 2013, I did a short visiting scholarship professorship here, and it was very productive. Actually, I gathered the information, and actually the only first academic book on the phenomenon of Shime was written, has been written by me, and I did that research as a visiting scholar at the Woodson Institute. So I'm grateful to be here. It's like I feel I'm home, right? Yeah. So now I wanted to give you a contextual background about the code of that panel. It was an article that I published. It was, we say in French, billet, et c'est un billet que j'ai envoyé à la professeure Lucie Carmel Paul Austin, et j'ai publié cet article-là dans les deux plus grands magazines ou journaux d'Haïti, c'est le Nouvelliste et le National. Et le titre de mon article, c'est la responsabilité éthico-morale des haïtianistes contemporains pour faire avancer le champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes. L'article a été publié le 3 septembre 2017. Vous pouvez voir la quantité de visualisation qu'il y a. Et puis, Lucie Carmel Paul Austin, elle m'a répondu. Donc, c'est un article qu'elle a publié aussi dans le Nouvelliste, c'est un article reporté ici à Haïti. Donc, moi, je suis sociologue, mais ma trajectoire est vraiment différente avec les autres haïtiens. Et je crois que quand nous parlons du champ intellectuel ou du champ dans les disciplines d'études haïtiennes, comme sociologue, nous savons que le champ, c'est un espace qui est à la fois un espace plus fort. Oh, but they told me that I can speak French or Creole. Yeah, they told me that. Yeah, okay, c'est un champ à la fois de consensus et c'est un espace aussi de conflit. Donc, je pense que quand nous parlons du champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes, il ne faut pas être innocent pour savoir que depuis la genèse de la fondation de l'État-nation en Haïti, il y a beaucoup d'acteurs qui investissent, qui envahissent le champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes, mais tout ce qui se fait comme production intellectuelle, comme production de biens symboliques, tous ces savoirs-là ne participent pas forcément au développement du pays, au développement intellectuel ou à une projection d'une image nationale et internationale d'Haïti. Donc, c'est dans ce contexte-là dont nous parlons des études haïtiennes. Nous qui sommes ici, si nous nous situons dans une perspective phénoménologique, nous sommes des haïtianistes contemporains et associés. Mais dans le monde de la vie quotidienne, par exemple, le champ des études haïtiennes, ce que Lucie Carmel Paul Austin appelle la matière haïtienne, nous avons des ancêtres, ce que les phénoménologues, ils appellent les haïtianistes qui sont les prédécesseurs. Donc, il faut retourner aux prédécesseurs, il faut retourner aux prédécesseurs pour dialoguer avec eux. Parce que dans un champ, dans tous les champs, comme sociologue, si nous parlons de la sociologie, il y a une étape classique et aussi il y a une étape contemporaine. Dans toutes les disciplines, dans tous les champs, il faut qu'il y ait des classiques. Mais qui sont les classiques du champ intellectuel et interdisciplinaire des études haïtiennes? Quelle a été la place assignée à la femme dans le champ, dans la production du champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes? Qui est le doyen ou la doyenne du champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes? Moi, j'ai été formé en Haïti, j'ai laissé Haïti après ma licence, j'ai fait toutes mes études de postgraduat en Amérique latine et je suis formé avec des gens de la gauche. Et pour les gens de la gauche, par exemple, mes professeurs exilés chiliens au Mexique, exilés chiliens en Colombie, etc. Donc, il faut opérationnaliser, comme l'a dit Paul Lassalle, les concepts. Donc, les études haïtiennes, c'est quoi exactement? Le champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes, qu'est-ce que ça signifie? Haïtianisme contemporain, qu'est-ce que ça signifie? Donc, je vais rapidement lire mon code. J'ai écrit. Chez les haïtianistes contemporains, il semble avoir un consensus sur l'idée que les études haïtiennes peuvent être conçues comme un grand champ de production et de diffusion de savoir sur Haïti et les Haïtiens. Actuellement, au XXIe siècle, il y a un pressant besoin de débattre sereinement les dites études du point de vue gnoséologique, ontologique, épistémologique et méthodologique. Quelle est la meilleure stratégie à mettre en exergue par ceux qui détiennent une certaine position d'influence dans l'orientation du dit champ pour parvenir à la maturité intellectuelle du champ des Haïtiens. Nous sommes dans un champ. Why we don't have a master or PhD in Haitian studies as people in African American studies they have a master. So, nous ne sommes pas encore un champ qui a atteint une certaine maturité intellectuelle. Mais ce champ-là, il existe depuis le début du 19e siècle. Donc, c'est intéressant pour savoir ça parce que, en fait, dans le champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes, il y a une perspective, il y a une tendance qui est francophone, il y a une tendance qui est anglo-saxonne, mais généralement, il y a une certaine, étant donné que l'anglais, c'est, comme vous parlez, répéter, Tony Negri et Michael Hart, l'anglais, c'est la langue de l'Empire. Donc, généralement, même par exemple, le professeur Régent Azim, il m'a dit de m'exprimer dans l'océan anglais. Mais encore, la production des études haïtiennes peut se faire en anglais, peut se faire, et ça se fait en anglais, ça se fait en français, ça se fait en allemand, ça se fait en espagnol, ça se fait en portugais. Moi, j'ai reçu des thèses de doctorat. Il y a beaucoup de thèses qui se font actuellement au Brésil en portugais. Donc, là encore, de manière inconsciente, donc c'est ontologie, épistémologie. Pensez que tout ce qui se fait, par exemple, en anglais, c'est la chose la plus valide. Moi, sur le plan épistémologique, il faut savoir, il faut établir des critères pour interroger la validité des connaissances. Donc, quand nous parlons de nouvelles méthodes, donc il faut penser effectivement, est-ce que quelqu'un, par exemple, qui publie un bon texte, mais est-ce qu'un texte qui est publié en anglais ou bien qui est publié en allemand, est-ce que ce texte-là a plus de validité et permet un meilleur avancement des études haïtiennes que, par exemple, de la réhabilitation de la race de Hannibal Bras, ou encore de l'égalité des races humaines dans les normes humaines. Mais les textes de Firmin, ça c'est en français. Mais comme le français, c'est pas la langue de l'Empire, ou bien des textes qui se font en bon, maintenant il n'y a pas vraiment de production académique en créole. Il y a Michel Desgraves, donc je vais terminer. Ok, je vais terminer. Mais c'est intéressant pour savoir, par exemple, la question du chant, mais la question de la langue, le véhicule de circulation de cette connaissance. Quelle est la meilleure stratégie à mettre en exergue par ceux qui détiennent une certaine position d'influence dans l'orientation du dit-champ pour parvenir à la maturité intellectuelle des études haïtiennes à l'échelle nationale et internationale? Thomas Jefferson, ancien président des États-Unis et fondateur de cette université où nous sommes réunis, a tout fait, tout ce qui était en son pouvoir pour minimiser la dimension pluriverselle de la révolution haïtienne. Le racisme, la suprématie blanche et surtout la rationalité sous-jacente au fonctionnement de l'économie capitaliste étaient parmi les raisons explicatives de la reconnaissance tardive de l'indépendance haïtienne par les États-Unis. Aussi, les facteurs précités expliquent-ils pourquoi les discours culturels, politiques et socio-économiques sur Haïti sont souvent trop imprégnés de néocolonialisme. Donc, je termine. Dans ce spécifique moment sociopolitique où l'occupant de la Maison Blanche, à savoir M. Donald J. Trump, multiplie la promotion de discours et pratiques participant dans la promotion de la stigmatisation d'Haïti et des Haïtiens d'ici et d'ailleurs, nous qui sommes réunis ici à l'Université de Virginie avons une responsabilité éthico-morale pour travailler en coopération, combitis, en utilisant les études haïtiennes, les Haitian Studies Institute, associations et programmes, dans le sens d'une justice décoloniale. But the big question now is why? Because in the dialogue we will have, because the actors, the different actors, they have their own ideology, they have their own interests. So to find a minimum consensus, we'll find out. Thank you so much.
Let's start with one basic question to all of you. What do we mean by Haitian studies that is specific to Haitian studies? In other words, let's say that I come from the Congo and I say Congolese studies. Wouldn't I say very much the same thing that we are saying about Haitian studies? So what is the specificity of Haitian studies? And can we build Haitian studies as the field of inquiry that is basically specific to Haiti? Or should we really have a much broader vision of Haiti without denying the historical specificity and culture of Haiti?
So if you want, I will start. I think when we say Haitian studies, I think we have to pay attention to the concept. Haitian studies is Haitian studies is different than estudios haitianos, for instance, in Spanish, or les études haïtiennes, or études sous haïtiennes. So Haitian studies, I think it should be like a field. The focus has to be Haiti and the Haitian. So when we say Haitian studies, we are the concept refers only to Haitian, the people. But what about the place? I think this is like one of the equation. You know, Haitian studies is a field of research. This field per se is not a field because your field is political science. Claudine Michel is psychology, and then education, religious study, cultural studies, francophone studies. And it's a cross-disciplinary, it's a subfield, you know, but the focus is because from history, from literature, from political science, from sociology, from cultural studies, we are doing stuff that are connected to Haiti and to the Haitian.
I mean, I think for me, and as someone trained in language and literature, if we're looking at the words, I think we need to keep it broad. Haitian studies will mean different things depending on where we are, literally in terms of geography. I mean, Lawrence, Kansas. So what Haitian studies mean for me will possibly be different from what it means for Jean-Yves, who's at Brooklyn College. My view of Haitian studies, for me, what's important in the program that I'm trying to build is to create online courses for Haitian Creole to make sure, as I'm looking at service learning program, that my students from Kansas, from Kansas, is going to Haiti with a different mindset. It's going to Haiti with different narratives, to quote Professor Elise. It's going to Haiti understanding that they are not going to save Haiti, that they have to go with respect, they have to go with ethics, they have to understand that if they really want to go to Haiti, that mindset, they have to learn the language. What is their role in going to Haiti? Or they going just to put something on their CV? What kind of service are they going to provide? So I think for me that's at the core. Already I have to pinpoint Haiti on the map, so which will be different from somebody else. And I'm dealing with a program that's one of the oldest, founded in 1992 by Brian Freeman, but it was kind of on pause for a long time. So I'm taking vestiges from what he has built, and very respectfully, but a lot of what he has built was very problematic in terms of how Haitian Creole was shown as a peasant language in final fact. So I'm taking those vestiges carefully, but trying to build something new, saying Haitian Creole is very real. Haitian Creole is not this language that only people from the York speak. So that's what Haitian studies currently means for me. I'm hoping if in 3-5 years I can get funds to bring another scholar's Haitian studies would possibly change. But right now, I'm like the captain of the boat. I'm the person who has to do everything on that boat.
Well, for me, Haitian studies is recentering Haiti at the center. It's reverting the gaze. It is reshifting narratives from a perspective of the folks from the emic side who understand, and those allies who accompany us in the study of Haitian studies, who have taken the steps to learn the language and who learn the culture and respect the people and the knowledge that they bring. And as Mark says, interdisciplinarity is best. In terms of history, Haiti was global before globalization. If we know anything about the history of the Caribbean and the role that Haiti played in great power diplomacy in the 1800s, 1900s, the American occupation, how much can we learn about the United States in current politics? What kind of role the U.S. has played in terms of, creating racial divides in Haiti, class divisions, how we're still dealing with the remnants and the repercussions of this intervention, our own relationship with the Haiti-Dominican border. What is the role that the United States has played in creating this border that did not exist before, and creating the lines of that border and determining on one day who's Haitian, who's Dominican. And when we talk about citizenship, so there are so many lessons to be learned about Haiti. And just like with ethnic studies, it's a lens through which you analyze the world and provide answers to different areas of scholarship coming from sociology and literature, but looking at it from that deep area of knowledge that is respectful and that's ethical in the way that we go in depth to really learn the subject matter and not throwing answers and just using Haiti like people have done, for example, after the earthquake. I mean, every time you turn around, there was a new book on Haiti. You had new experts. I had some students at UC Santa Barbara who printed cards about director of education in Haiti, okay? And this had to be, you know, of course, questioned. You know, they were the expert. They were seeking jobs. So really reminding people of that ethical component. It's like Haiti's being oppressed, exploited. It has to stop, okay? All these things have happened in excess in Haiti and to Haiti. And it is time for Haitians to speak with their own voices on their own terms and to define scholarship from their own perspective, their own ancestral knowledge, their own methodologies, their own voices and ways of telling their stories and being in the world. So that's Haitian studies.
Everything that you've said, I think that piggybacking on that a little bit, just the sense of the why Haitian studies matters to all these areas, right? And I think that's the kind of power of, for one thing, as you mentioned, the kind of way in which I don't think there's any country in the world that has had more kind of projected on it from outside, this kind of very long, very pathological relationship to the idea of Haiti, this kind of whole landscape that we have to explore and kind of that we face all the time in what you're describing. So that's kind of uniquely vast and complex as a discursive space, and of course it's part of a broader kind of space of racism and white supremacy, but it's at its core in a certain way. So the fact of dealing with these is always a way to deal with these larger things. But secondly, just the ways in which, as a field, I think the transdisciplinary nature of Haitian studies, I think really should be a model for the rest of the university, as we've all, I think, experienced. There's just kind of crossings and collaborations that happen that universities are constantly saying they would like to see, but that are kind of embedded in the way people have been working for many decades. So I think it's why, in a sense, of course, it's a specific place, but it's also a specific place that kind of pushes towards projects that have all these larger implications.
Now, all of us are at universities, we are talking a lot about interdisciplinary studies. And yet, when we look at the different disciplines, they are not necessarily welcoming. I mean, in terms of building in the United States, I'm not talking about elsewhere, but if you're in sociology, if you're in political science, if you're in history, it is extremely difficult for scholars doing it to even get tenure, because when they publish is not looked at good enough. It's not, and we are interdisciplinary. So how do you deal with the building of Asian studies in really a hostile disciplinary environment? And there's a lot of racism in it too. I mean, a lot of people like Trump would have said, this is the shithole. Why the hell do we study that? It's irrelevant.
Guys, I'm sorry, I think that's so vital. But that's part of what I'm trying to say, right? Is that each of us inhabit disciplines that are quite hostile often to what we're doing, and so just carving out those spaces. But that's why the kind of allyship across disciplines is so vital, right? So that there's that kind of advocacy, and I think that is you can see the results. I think because the last decades have seen more and more people in lots of disciplines in Asian studies who I don't think would be able to do what they were doing if not for the sustenance of the field. So I think that's vital, right? And obviously those battles have to be won in the structures that exist, kind of steadily fought place by place and discipline by discipline, but also the larger question has to be maintained. So.
I will talk about institution building, and I think the case of the Journal of Haitian Studies that was originally thought of by the people who created the Haitian Studies Association, and that's Alex Cantal, that is Gerdès Florent, Josiane Pudicourt-Bon, and Beverly Clark, the late Beverly Clark, and Leslie Desmond was also one of the earlier members, and also Carol Coates, who was the editor of the first 2 tiny little issues of Haitian Studies journal. The journal moved to Santa Barbara. The first 3 or 4 issues I did by myself with an undergraduate student who helped with, proofreading or what have you. And little by little, we now have a half-time career staff position at a fairly high level associated with the Journal of Haitian Studies at the Center for Black Studies Research. And this person happens to also be the managing editor for Carrefour, the journal that I created with Melvin Oliver at UC Santa Barbara, and for which George Lipsitz is the current editor. And it's a journal of comparative ethnic studies. But just to be able to take that journal and have the institution fund a full-time managing editor for those two journals. And even though the Journal of Haitian Studies is its own entity, but putting that Haiti twist on that other journal was very important, because I started from that concept of Carrefour that I, very, very briefly described to you, but it's all relational, okay? In terms of ethnic studies, we cannot be talking about poverty and immigration if we're not looking at what's happening at the people coming from Latin America, Haiti, what's happening in the Sudan, what's happening with the refugees in Italy, or what have you. So it's very important. How can we be talking about public health, okay? How can I be healthy if my neighbor is not? So this is really, really important. Coalition building, working around themes that are common. But to go back to the Journal of Haitian Studies as an academic space, other space. Is Sarah Johnson here? I see her in the program. She could not come. Okay, I will talk about her. She has published, I tell people, I've been editor of the journal for 21 years. I have some favorite pieces in that journal. And one of her articles is one of my favorite pieces. And she had told me as a young scholar in the UC system how that piece had been rejected by different journals because it wasn't quite political science. It wasn't quite media studies. It wasn't quite literature. It was about Gomez Peña, who was running for the election in the Dominican Republic, and how he was cast as that Haitian, what have you, including cartoons with his lips like whatever size and all that. And basically, when my readers read that piece, it was automatically accepted with comment that the piece was brilliant and just cutting edge and a model of interdisciplinary scholarship. So that's an example. Senior people would not publish in the journal at first because it wasn't quite the right source recognized by the academy. I had to beg some senior people to send pieces to us. Junior people who were strong would not necessarily publish with us because they needed the step of the academy in their own discipline. And often they would tell me, I will start publishing with you when I get tenure. And I'm going to quote my Tokai, Michel Degraff here, who is at a very tough institution, MIT, okay? He is in linguistics. He is, our brother who has opened so many paths for us in terms of placing Creole in the place of respect that it deserves. But I remember having that conversation with Michelle. It's like, I need to send this piece to a linguistics journal because I'm up for tenure. So now, when we have the Robert Faton, the Michel Degraff publishing with us, this tells you something about the persistence to create that other space and how the journal right now is quite recognized. In 2014, the Radical History Review rated the journal as the #1 publication in Black Studies for that year. Okay, so persistence, boldness, irreverence when needed.
I need to say something.
Yes.
The journal is you, baby. So you are the mother of all editors.
Let me say something though, to give a shout out to Robert. Robert was one of the very senior people who from day on did not hesitate to say, I am letting my name to the press. And he's a faithful reviewer for 21 years. They are others. So,
I'm already invisible in Kansas. I can't get invisible.
You shall not be silent.
I shall not be silent. So for me, I think the fact that the Institute of Haitian Studies was founded in a space where Professor Brian Freeman was in the French department, and there's all types of stories I hear, but ultimately with all these stories, rumors, it was moved from the French department to African and African American studies. And being in that space of African and African American studies has allowed me to have a lot of pull and allow me to be in a space that's very interdisciplinary. So my department has historians, sociologists, art historian. So I don't have to compete with anyone, because also everyone heard about Missouri. So what happened in Missouri? So KU has been scared. So the last 3 or 4 years, the conversation has switched. So there's not just talk. I feel like we have a provost for diversity, equity, and inclusion who's really pushing, who's really making department put their money where their mouth is. We are not where we need to be. But having started at KU 3 years ago, I'm now working with different centers, and I'm in a position, I'm associate director of the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. While there's no money, but it allowed me to push Haitian studies. Even the fact that the Caribbean was added, was a big thing, as many of you know what I'm talking about. I'm also, my department has started having this conversation that why are we just, it was traditionally either people who work on the African continent or African American. And you all know what I'm talking about with that war as well. So here I come, this person from a diasporic space. I do work on West Africa, but I'm primarily a Caribbean who works on French-speaking Caribbean. So it has allowed me to be in different spaces because I don't fall in either one specifically. Also, because again, Kansas being very wide, I'm now affiliated faculty of American Studies because we're having discussion, what is the Americas beyond the US and Canada? So I'm there. Women, gender, and sexuality studies is also trying to have, where do we put the Caribbean? Because it has been just, the US, Europe, and Latin America. So I'm using all these spaces to allow me to have this conversation. We have a Spencer Museum of Art that has one of the best collections of Haitian art. We can have a whole discussion under the conference on the ethics of how that work of art got to KU, but I'm trying to use that space. So in the fall, I'm co-curating an exhibit entitled Haiti, the United States, and the Ties That Bind, bringing in a Haitian American artist from New Orleans to have this conversation, Haiti and the Louisiana Purchase. So I had to tell Kansas, part of Kansas was in the Louisiana Purchase. It's linked to Haiti. This is what's in it for you. It's important. So I'm trying to use my positionality with all these spaces to really be interdisciplinary. But again, I'm in a department that allows me to do that. I have a wonderful chair who's giving me that space, who's supporting the institute.
JD,
Yes.
Let me ask you for permission to add a footnote, a very important footnote about Cecile. 3 years ago, the University of Kansas advertised the first ever faculty position in Haitian studies, and Cecile was hired in that position. Shortly after, UC Santa Barbara advertised for a postdoc in Haitian studies, okay? But this is the kind of infiltration that we need. So Laura, I know you are doing great work with Haitian studies. Let's see where you can take the institution in terms of, hiring a couple of Haitianists, okay? So, it's a challenge to all of us, okay?
We have to answer. In my situation is even though you see me like that guy is almost smiling, but I'm the fighter when it comes to defend Haiti. I got my master's degree in Latin American Studies at Constitution in Bogota. And people there, they don't know nothing about Haiti. I went to Bogota and educated them. The independence of La Nueva Granada, it was because of Haiti, because Miranda came to Haiti and then Simon Bolivar went to Haiti in 1815 and 1816. What Alejandro Petion did for you? So respect Haiti. So I went also after that, I went to Mexico and got my PhD in sociology. And at College of the Mexico, you are Haitian. So well, what is your topic of research? Because I always, my grad studies, all my dissertation, because in Haiti, I'm a graduate from the State University of Haiti, Faculty of Human Sciences, but to be graduate, you have to present a memoir de sortie. All my research have always been on Haiti. And at the Colegio de Mexico, you know, Professor Jean Casimir, the Colegio de Mexico, my colleagues always, oh, why you are studying Haiti, you know? You don't know that El General Francisco Javier Mina received help from the independence of Haiti because my field, I'm not only a sociologist, I did Latin American studies, I did library science. So at uni, I came to, because in Mexico, I was always already a tenured professor. So, and my research and my teaching were not in, my teaching was not in Haiti. I was a professor of comparative politics and political theory in graduate program. So for my teaching, I teach for you, but for my research is on Haiti. So, and the strategy I have been using to solve the problem, for instance, if I'm doing research on Haiti, I use my knowledge in sociology. You know, for instance, now I'm doing a book on François, the politics of the pays, part of my research dissertation, the politics of the pays in François in Baby Papadocracy, François Papadocracy. But why I'm using the discourse analysis, I am doing like a kind of research to connect, for instance, the discourse of Papadoc with positivism, with the discourse of Auguste Comte. So I'm trying to, you know, even though I'm doing, my research is on Haiti, but I pick, you know, background from other fields to explain to my colleagues, you know, the kind of research. And when you read you know, you can see Siemens, you can see Weber, you can see, but it's on Haiti because the field of Haitian studies, you know, sociology can enhance, and at the same time, Haitian studies enhance those fields too. And now, regarding my position, but I'm at Brooklyn, and after Miami, as you know, Brooklyn is the Haitian diaspora or trans-diasporic community with the highest number of Haitian people in the US. And at Brooklyn College, hopefully we have the Haitian community surrounding Brooklyn College. And we have a new president. She's like open-minded. So for her, it's okay, and she's helping the institute. But I'm trying my knowledge, my network, international network from Colombia, to invite on campus and do research with other faculty in Haiti, in Mexico, in other places to show to Brooklyn College, hey, what is Haitian studies? Because Haitian studies is, as I mentioned earlier, is to connect what people are doing in Germany on Haiti, in Canada on Montreal on Haiti. We have a Haitian diaspora in Geneva, so Switzerland, to connect them because I know them. So I'm trying to explain, you know, the field of Haitian studies. A field is something we say in Creole, ouvert fermé. A field, so this is also a question I would like to address. Closing, when we say a field is open and closed at the same time. And in the Haitian studies as a field, for instance, Laurent Dubois, I don't know if Laurent Dubois is Haitian, but so no, this is important about what I will say. A field is important. A field is not for Haitian, it's open. So, you know, it's the intense, what we say in the French, l'intentionnalité. It's the intention of the people, because oftentimes, you know, the people that we call as foreigner, they can bring things very valuable to the field. And we can have Haitian people born in Haiti, but as Frantz Fanon say, they reproduce the mentality of the of the masters. You know, it's the intention, the kind of research, you know, quelle est la logique dans ce que vous produisez dans le champ. Je pense que c'est la chose qui est la plus importante. Merci beaucoup. Okay.
Now we have about 30 minutes and it's open to the audience to ask questions, make comments.
En anglais, il va parler allemand, hollandais,
oh, yeah, bon, c'est très bien. Par exemple, songez dans le même dans la littérature, par exemple, on parle du 19e siècle, et il y a un pile de travail qui fait en 19e siècle, par exemple, qui généralement qui fait en français, mais il y a une série de travail qui a commencé à faire en créole depuis le 19e siècle, dans tout le 20e siècle. Mais généralement, songez-nous parler de Jean-Michel, on a des exemples, parce que songez-nous parler de Jean, il y a un ensemble d'idéologies, c'est des acteurs qui hégémonisent dedans et avec l'autre monde, il y a bataille pour parler du contrôle de l'hégémonie, mais il y a d'autres acteurs qui vivent subalternes dans le champ. Mais l'autre dans le champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes. Donc, toujours bon appareil, ça a des appareils idéologiques qui toujours utilisé par exemple l'anglais. C'est un coup, si on fait études haïtiennes, mais ce n'est pas un anglais, c'est un coup, est-ce que c'est un analphabète? C'est comme ça, on va nous bien, en créole français, soit on fait en français, ou pas, on va faire en créole, pas faire en français, à soit faire du paquet, aucune validité. Mais ça, c'est une vision paradigmatique qui légitime les connaissances dans le champ. Comme son champ qui a intérêt là-dedans, bon gens, il y a une agence qui légitime le mode de connaissance en dans le champ. Donc, ça veut dire que ça t'a fait un créole, on ne va pas bien passer, il n'y a pas de valeur, aucune valeur. Donc, c'est pour ça que nous avons une responsabilité éthico-morale. Par exemple, c'est une morale impérative nous gagnons pour nous lutter, pour faire valoir connaissance qu'a fait montrer ça et les connaissances, c'est pas connaissance, c'est un véhicule ou c'est pas parce qu'on va faire l'autre c'est qui sa substance ça va pas là. Donc ça fait par exemple connaître créole, il y a une production en créole qui fait, mais c'est parce qu'on connaît système dans son système élitiste, son système Jean-Pierre Bourdieu, Jean-Claude Passon qui a reproduit inégalité parce que ensemble d'intérêts en dans le champ intellectuel des études haïtiennes. Par exemple, les Haïtiens indépendants, et on paquet de production, surtout étrangère qui va le mettre. Mais après, ça demande dans le champ. Et après, ça toujours dans le champ. Mais c'est pour véhiculer, pour montrer vos dollars, c'est pas qu'à diable. Vos dollars, c'est pas qu'à Satan que lié. Donc, c'est intentionnalité. C'est une nouvelle méthode pour Haitian c'est dans le 21e siècle. La nouvelle méthode, ça il faut nous reconnecter à la méthode 19e siècle. Parce que vous pensez, si nous avons besoin de chercher classique dans le champ, pour nous constituer un aller de la maturité, il faut nous des classiques dans le champ. Même en sociologie, anthropologie, champ, en dessous, il faut nous reconnaître qui est-ce qui classique. C'est bataille, on va battre avec plusieurs monde, incluant mon akayo. Il faut tout, moi-même, ma bataille pour que nous connaissions, ma bataille avec toute white suprématie, etc. Parce que Jean-François l'ont dit là. Il n'y a pas parce que c'est Haïti, pour nous, un stigma sur nous. Ou quand on déjà parlé, on nous dit que être haïtien, you know, to be Haitian is not a nationality. C'est une volonté. Donc, c'est pas pour nous. Tout le monde met à dormir, nous même faut toujours démontrer ce que nous mais nous sommes tout plus efforts pour nous faire. C'est bataille, son bataille que lié, son champ, l'enchant pas gain acteur, il n'est pas passif. Il y a acteur qui est dans le champ, qui toujours à battre, c'est pour reproduction statut quo, et statut quo à différentes dimensions, parce que statut quo est conforme à l'intérieur. Mais il y a l'autre acteur de la bataille pour changer logique en dans champ. Voilà.
Mais ça n'a pas joué dans ça, Michel disait, il faut continuer pour la créole, on va continuer à parler en créole parce que la majorité de gens là, pas parler créole. Et même vous et Timonio, et beaucoup de chapeau pour nous que participer à la conversation avec nous. Vous comprenez? Même des messages de Michel et des petits mots dans la langue maman. ok? Mais maintenant dans l'anglais là, je pense que au-delà, ok? Master's tool to dismantle the master's house, ok? Nous pas continuer que nous utiliser. We can't continue to use the same theoretical framework. And I hear you about going back to our classic thinkers, okay? But I'm also advocating for the integration of the new voices, okay? When, in fact, it was the inauguration of the Brooklyn Institute, and I was one of the speakers, and I actually spoke about BBC last theory in the young scholars, okay, who really have created very important concepts and notions that are tools for us to move our scholarship forward. We have a very own Gina list sitting here. When Gina talks about the new narrative, that thing has taken off, okay? People have embraced it. When you have Wesleyan University publishing for the first time, just like what I said about Cecile, her new narratives book in 3 languages at the same time. What is it in the methodology and the epistemology and the roadmap that she's giving us that we need to engage and build upon? So,
Okay.
I mean, I think it is our responsibility to decolonize the canon. You know, we have choices. For instance, for me, both in terms, I do a lot of work on gender. When I'm teaching my course on Intro to Haitian Culture and Identity, I have the choice to use Gina Ulysses' book, to use Marie Chauvet's book, to not just, while I like Jacques Roumet, but to not only use Jacques Roumet. While I love and appreciate Dantica, and she's done a lot to not only take Haitian culture and Haitian literature is only about Dantica, to look at work by Gigi Dominique, to look at work by Evelyn Trouillot, and more. So for me, coming even from a space of gender, it's also about decolonizing the canon. To choose historian, more and more, there are some Haitian historians that have somewhat translated into English, because I know that has been a problem. We, as the people, as the scholars, we have leeway to make those choices, and we must be conscious about those choices.
Thank you for bringing the notion of gender, because that's the area that we like, gender, sexuality, queer studies. Haitian studies has a lot to learn, for example, from the methodologies of feminist studies and ethnic studies in this area, and we cannot continue to avoid the race talk and the gender talk and the sexuality talk.
Laurent, you've been very quiet.
I mean, I'm thinking of Jacques' work at Duke, where partly that Creole is now taught in Romance studies, right? So we have a department that has Creole as one of these languages, which I think there has been really successful. I mean, I don't know if Jacques wants to speak to this, but this kind of construction of, and last year led a student, who was an American student who wrote a thesis in Haitian Creole, the first, I think, of its kind. That was really incredible. So.
Do you foresee any issues in the interest and willingness of students to participate in the Haitian studies programs? Are many universities willing to add another program to their curriculum? How are we finding professors who represent Haiti in the classroom?
Money.
Institution building.
I mean, again, right now, and I've been working with a donor for 2 years, just give $30,000. And this may seem like it's nothing, but it's a big thing, especially for students to go to Haiti doing service learning. And I have been courting this donor for like almost 2 years, working with him down there. And I'm hoping, and I hope Dr. Freeman is watching this, that he'll leave some money for the Institute of Haitian Studies. I mean, that's a big part of it. And then we have shifted our Haitian Creole part 1 is online. because it's always back to money, unfortunately. We're in a capitalist society. We have to show the university that there are students interested in Haitian Creole and that they are taking these courses. And so I have to make the argument that, yeah, this is why we need to have someone to teach Haitian Creole online. And for me, it starts with interest, it starts with studying abroad, it starts with working with NGOs. Last semester, and I'm at a research one university, I taught 3 classes. I taught an overload because the students in architecture and design, they have a service learning program. They were in Torbec, and they wanted to go to Haiti. They invited me to be a part of, to have conversation with them, and I say, I have a responsibility. I don't want people to say, you're going from KU and you're going to Haiti in that space without being ethical. So I taught a 1 credit course. I'm like, this is just the beginning. But I made sure that they were thinking about their positionality as American, as predominantly white, also as women, who in the building, it's a like several semester program to build a program in Haiti. But people see architecture, they see it as something concrete. So they are spaces, but again, we have to be willing to sacrifice, and we have to think about positionality.
And I mean, I feel so many students have been transformed by studying Haiti, right? That's part of it, the
Yes.
kind of effect we've seen as well. But also in terms of the funding, I mean, the Radio Haiti project at Duke is committed also to creating a trilingual library catalog, which they had to figure out how to do just as a computing question. But getting the library involved, and we've now just got a second NEH grant to do that work. So there's a way in which to kind of, like you said, the US government is paying for Creole. But there is a way in which that meant kind of convincing the library to acquire and take on this this technologically complicated project. And that came from actually basically in kind of powerful ways, them learning the story of this radio station and feeling compelled by it and feeling like they wanted to actually join. So that's part of the funding, and also the kind of coalition building that you mentioned several times is key.
Yeah.
Oh,
so I would like to
So I heard the first part. You like me to comment on that?
It is dictionary, technically it's not a dictionary.
Yeah. I'm not a linguist, so the language is hard.
Yeah. So you said, you know, describe Haitian Creole is glossary as a piece of language. And then you said Creole language is not just only that. But I would like you to comment, you know, that what
I mean. Yeah, both Brian Freeman and Albert Valman were two of the people who were at the forefront in the 90s when many people did not even consider Haitian Creole a language. So they were doing work. And Valman, for instance, published Enfin, Toute, which for so long was the book to use. And I remember teaching at Tulane in the 90s, early 2000s. That's the book that my supervisor had me use. When you look at that book, it's very colonial, it's disturbing, and Valman is a linguist. He has also published books on teaching French. For instance, on the body part, you have examples such as frappe tête, hit your head. He will never have done that in a French book. Why is it that you're talking about body parts? That's the example you are going to give. Also, when you look at the conversation, and even some of the new version, it's name of citoyen, Asefi, as if Haitian Creole, it's not une langue vivante, a modern language where you go to cyber cafe. Right now, I mean, I was in Haiti, there's like all type of words, how they've been used for gérer, sous-béton. The language is very much alive. And then go to the academy, and some of your members of the academy. The very fact that we don't have young people in the academy, I find that very problematic. Because they are the one who's shaping the language, you know, through their songs, through rapping. How are we going to continue building, making sure Haitian Creole remain alive when the people who are shaping the language are not part of that discussion.
L'amour mental, en position nous en académie, comment est-ce que nous avons cherché, est-ce que aujourd'hui nous cherchons rétribution ou bien est-ce que c'est bien seulement l'affaire? Are we still looking for retribution or are we still trying to do this good deeds? Because you spoke about the
Okay, yeah. Je pense que nous besoin tous les deux, que c'est toujours important pour retirer toute mythe, toute omission, pour comme si vous mettez l'histoire à jour, ok? Mais l'important tout pour créer ou même, par exemple, c'est là que, comme si nous avons dit, knowledge qui gagne dans le bagage de art. Ok, c'est si tu as parlé de jeunes monde qui fait là, qui fait ceci, qui fait cela. La performance, it's a whole other type of contribution. Okay, so what I'm saying is that representation, address conditions, but there's been a lot of that done. We have some historians in this room here who have done, fantastic work with helping with that paradigm and shift. Matthew Smith and Laura and some others and Deborah who have done tremendous work, as people who have accompanied us with the project of restoring the real history from the lenses of people who understand the true history of Haiti. But there's also a need and a space to create and tell your own story. And I think the best example that I can give you is COSAMBA, the scholarly organization for the study of Haitian Vodou that we have housed at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and where we are not really spending a lot of time reacting to the misrepresentation about Vodou, but really telling the story from our own perspective. When I say our own perspective, I mean the Haitian perspective, but also the perspective of the young scholars, Haitian and non-Haitians, who have joined in that project of telling that story from the standpoint of music, from the standpoint of myth and rituals, from the standpoint of literature, from economic understanding. So it's a space to be claimed in the academy. And as I said earlier, it is not just about claiming that space in the academy. It's that moral responsibility to take that knowledge to change lives and transform aggrieved communities in Haiti, beyond of Haitians and other people of color and other marginalized people in the world.
This is a really good follow-up. I think earlier on, students talked about what it meant to be teaching Haitian studies in campus. Because I saw a parent, right? I did white probably, and you're having to make an intervention both through educating and teaching. I'm wondering if you all would talk about a little bit what it means to engage in Haitian studies. It's relying on what Haitian studies, right, in terms of the specificity of Haitian studies, because we know that history, and it's a history that the field actually has been engaged in so much addressing, right? And we're trying to sort of, fill in all these gaps. But how do you create new PhDs in Haitian studies who are not going to do the work that's just about Haiti as an idea or a project? Because if we don't take care of that, we're going to be having the same conversations in 20, 30 years. I will not be here, but that's basically what's going to happen. So, I think, talk about the moral responsibility. So what does it mean to be doing engaged scholarship and to recognize that Haiti itself as an intellectual project is one that needs something more specific?
Gina, let me say that what you're saying is so important. Okay, Haitian studies. journals, the focus is and its relations with the international community and others. Okay, if I take, for example, the work of translation of Kayama, I mean, it's opening up doors. You know, I didn't mention Marlene as a historian who's delivered, you know, formidable projects. But
no,
you know,
I mean, it's about training students.
Okay,
because they're going to become professors. How do we make sure they're more like y'all?
Okay,
right? Because that's the point. Because if they're not more like y'all, and they're kind of like too much of the old guard, Haitian studies is not gonna.
Right. Yeah. Well, Gina, I think you're a master teacher. Okay. No, we're not talking about you, but it's about taking teaching seriously. Okay? People in the academy, especially folks at Research One University, you know, are in their towers thinking that it's all about research. And I have 4 degrees in education, so I am passionate about the classroom. I'm passionate about this gift that we are given to guide and help our new generation embrace those ideas. So I think, again, it's about boldness in the classroom. It's about telling the truth. It's not about, you know, being, you know, not speaking the truth, for example, about racism. It's about being bold, about being real, about confronting pain and those histories that are ugly, looking at the realities both in Haiti and elsewhere, and really bringing that moral responsibility for us to be agent of change as people who are being trained in research universities, who are getting PhDs. It is not about that ivory tower, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about what Bell Hooks said, teaching to transgress and putting ourselves out there. Probably 2 months ago, or in April, so in February, I went to this College Art Association conference because I am working, co-curating this exhibit. And there was a panel, 2-part panel, on Haitian art from 1940s to the present. I'm a scholar, literary and cultural studies scholar. I'm not an art historian, but I look at art because I think these are important medium of representation. So I went to the panel with, you know, excitement or how I was going to learn more about art beyond what I know. The scholars, and these were major people in the field of Haitian art, they were presenting, conflating Haitian art and voodoo. They were basically giving this narrative that basically Haitian artists all believe in voodoo and that they use voodoo to sell their work. I tried to reframe the conversation to tell them how problematic that was, but it didn't hit to them. And these were like, again, major scholars in the field. Since this is live stream, I don't want to get into this debate, but I am writing a rebuttal. I am writing a rebuttal, and I send it to a journal that I'm hoping will accept it. So what you're saying is very problematic, and this is why, for me, I don't know, it's like once I pass 40, I've gotten older. I mean, even before I had tenure, I'm like, you know, and I think we have to tell people the truth. And I take, as what Claudine said, I take my teaching seriously. Students either really like me or they don't like me, because I tell them guilt is not an excuse. You have to, you know, you have to educate yourself. I don't mind if I'm in that space. I want to create a safe space. We can talk about it, and I push my colleagues too, you know, because sometimes the colleagues are worse. So I think
we have one last question.
Oh, okay, all right. This is such fascinating. Oh, wait, should I or the guest?
Well, let's say 2 questions. One for Deborah, one for.
Okay, all right. My question, you've all spoken in different ways about the importance of context to Haitian studies, to what you're doing in Kansas, to what you're doing at Brooklyn, to what you're doing at Santa Barbara, et cetera. So I'm going to just expand that outward to think about Haitian studies in general in the U.S. Academy. And in the U.S. Academy, that becomes increasingly more corporatized. We are live stream, so I don't care. I really don't care. I'm duly constructed as the difficult person at university, so I will just stay enrolled. The question has to do with the demographics of U.S. academies.
has to do with diminishing resources, has to do with what institutions value, because what institutions value is what they will support, what they will take to the foundations, what they will take to the donors, right? And there is a way in which the most marginalized fields of study are put in competition with each other for diminishing resources. Now, I want to link that to the shifting demographics in the student population in U.S. academies, where you have, say, African-American students feeling that they are marginalized in relation to African second generation or first generation. You get the drift. So how do we advance the important project of Haitian studies, of Caribbean studies more generally, within this complex academy, which includes diminishing resources and resources that seem ever more in characteristically diminishing for marginalized populations? We seem to be able to find money for every arcane thing that anybody might want to pursue, but somehow there never seems to be any money to do the kind of work that you're talking about. Long-winded question. Find your point of access. Courage, persistence in making the request, not being able to do the work. And again, when the first money that you see Santa Barbara gave me for the job was $7,000 to be spent on 3 years. This is where we are right now. Where is the project? You have to walk the walk. You have to do the work.
But some people walk the walk and do the work, and the results are demonstrable, and they still don't get any money.
Then they need to build coalition. They need to go to the person who's getting the money. That's how. Put them on their side. You know, like courage in the academy goes a long way. Persistence, like staying on target. I hear you. Like, you know, what gets funded all the time, what goes in the museum, and you know, and it's challenging, but you keep at it.
Okay, so I think also Haitian studies, as Gina and as other people say, is important teaching, but Haitian studies goes also beyond teaching. Mm-hmm. I think the development process of Haitian studies for strengthening Haitian studies in the US, we do need to address it politically too. And by politically, I will say two specific things. For instance, the CUNY Haitian Studies Institute at Brooklyn College, we received funding. The first year we didn't receive nothing, you know, only Brooklyn College provided. But after the fiscal year 2018, we received some funding from New York City County. But why? It's because we have a Haitian American as county member. We have, for instance, 4 or 5 Haitian American as assembly members. So they advocate in Obani, they push, you know, so they did the coalition with the caucus, Asian caucus, Dominican American, Latin caucus, in the pressure on the New York City Council. We got some. So it is very important, the political work, at the same time. Also, I will the last example. When I came on campus, because I have less than 2 years living in the US. I was a professor in Mexico, so I don't know, maybe not over the Panama. So, but when I came on campus, because I wanted to organize like a summer exchange program in Haiti, I went to the Office of International Studies and Civic Engagement, and the director of that office said, okay, that will not happen, because if you go to the website of the Department of State, you will see they have traveled 1 million Haiti. You know, but when you compare Haiti with the 15 most dangerous cities in the we don't have any other city in Italy, but the State Department of Haiti, we are like too, you know, but the international community so afraid of Haiti At the same time, their website is US Embassy of Haiti, like news. Travel one. So at the same time, their website is US Embassy of Haiti, like news. Travel one. So we have also to address the issue politically. I think we have some ideological values, or they are not so visible, but they are actors also that put some obstacle in the development in the work we are doing to move forward nation studies.
Okay, last question. That's what okay, last question. Go ahead.